first of all, let me say that I am so honored to be here today with all of you. Looking around the room, I see many familiar faces, which is always great to see, but I'm also happy to see that there's lots of unfamiliar faces. So that tells me that in Buffalo, more people are interested in a sustainable economy, having more environmental issues be spoken about, and that's really exciting to me. I do not have any slides today, so you're only going to have to listen to me speak. Hopefully I'm entertaining and interesting enough to hold your attention. I'm going to try my best. Again, my name is Tyra Johnson. I own Blue Sky Design Supply, and what I also like to call Blue Sky Concepts. So I'll tell you a little bit about Concepts first. That is a new division of my company working on consulting, mostly with development and construction projects. I work with what I like to call community-minded projects. So these are sustainable construction and development projects, and by sustainable I mean both socially and environmentally sustainable, so it could be either or. And because I have a passion for what I do and I have a passion for sustainable products, I have a showroom downtown, and before I forget, I did bring coupons for everybody. If you'd like to get one of those before you leave. My showroom features innovative, eco-friendly building products, mostly finishes for residential projects. So my business, like many others, is a new breed that really wants to bring sustainability in the forefront and consider the greater good. I sell materials keeping sustainability in mind. I work on projects keeping sustainability in mind. But the most frequently asked question I have about my business is actually, why did you name it Blue Sky? Was anybody wondering that? Maybe not in this group, because you're very forward thinking. So, but for those of you that may be asking yourself that, let me just tell you a little bit about the name. I named my business Blue Sky for a couple different reasons. Have you ever heard the term blue sky as in blue sky thinking? Big ideals, lofty ideals, big approaches. And perhaps you've heard of the term blue thinkers before. Now, if you haven't heard this term, it's not widely used, but hopefully it will be more widely used in the future. Blue thinkers has a goal of making sustainability irresistible to the public. So this is a term that came out a couple years ago at a conference, and so people that label themselves blue thinkers, they want to think at that next level of innovation, making things so irresistible. It doesn't even matter if it's eco-friendly or if it's sustainable. People just like it because it works, and they buy it because they like what the product does or what the service does. But at the same time, it's sustainable. So that's why I named my business Blue Sky Design Supply. Blue, that vision of blue, promotes learning about the choices that you have and how they affect the world. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit more about the choices that you have. I wanted to say, because I was telling the two ladies at the table that oftentimes I speak about construction in my area of expertise, and I don't really speak a lot about myself. And I know Melanie asked that we share a little bit more about our personal history. So yes, I own a company, but prior to that, I worked in construction management for about 8 years, and I was working for one of the largest construction companies in the area. And prior to that, I worked in different engineering type disciplines. So my background is in civil and environmental engineering. I also have a business degree. And while I was working in construction, I really enjoyed it, although I saw some things that were a little bit disheartening to me. I saw things that I knew there was better ways of doing them, and at that time, when I was thinking about this, things like LEED and the U.S. Green Building Council, they were here, but they weren't necessarily, people didn't take that in consideration in every project. So I like to tell this story. There was like the aha moment that I saw. I worked mostly on schools, and I saw these big marble slabs that were being taken out of a school. And these big marble slabs were used for toilet partitions, because when these schools were built back in the 20s, they used marble. They used things that were very durable, that could last the test of time, which these did. But now we have to take consideration for things like ADA accessibility and things like that, so they needed to replace these and do something different. So I watched as these big marble slabs were taken out of the building and thrown into a dumpster. And I see my friend over here, Roxanne, like cringing. And I just thought I think that was the aha moment. I'm like, why didn't we think about doing something else with those? Or, why didn't we have some foresight about how we could reuse those? Or, what was the plan? And I guess the simple answer is that in construction, there's lots of things going on. And, you're really concerned with budget, you're concerned with schedule, you're concerned with getting the job done, reconstructing the building. And unfortunately, sometimes being sustainable is an afterthought. And so what I really enjoy doing is making sure that it's not an afterthought, that it's thought about before construction begins, that it's thought about in pre-construction and design and so forth. So in green construction or design, it's a really comprehensive approach. It employs a lot of different techniques. So oftentimes when I speak about green construction, people focus in on energy, saving energy in buildings, which is very important. I'm not here to diminish that in any way, but I just want to tell you that there's a lot of other components that go into green construction. So one of the things that I like to focus on is the health of the occupants. And for that matter, the health of the people that are putting in the materials into the building. Because you have people like our representative here from the electrical workers that your people are working in those buildings every day and they're exposed to all sorts of things. And we want to make sure that not only the end user has a healthy building, but the people that are there doing this sort of construction every day, they have healthy environments as well. So I'm going to just give you a few tips today, but first I wanted to give you a term that maybe you haven't heard before, and I know we had a representative that was from health sciences, so maybe she's heard about this. Have you heard the term building biology before? Building biology? Okay. So this is a term that started in the 70s, and it started in Germany. And basically, what they discovered is that after World War II, after that post-war era, buildings were getting so tight because people were trying to conserve energy that they were kind of locking in everything into the building and nothing was being released. So the health of the occupants, the people inside those buildings, it started to degrade because you're not only having everything kept into the building, but you're introducing all these new chemical components that we may not know what actually does to human health. So I'm going to talk a little bit about building biology today and some other sustainability terms, and I hope to demystify a couple of terms for you. First of all, before I go on, I want to talk more about our indoor air quality and what it means to think about your indoor air quality. Did you know that we spend about 80 to 90% of our time indoors? So in our westernized society, we spend 80 to 90% of our time indoors. So we should really be thinking about what we're breathing inside, right? Now, the EPA estimates that our air inside of our spaces can be anywhere from 2 to 200 times more toxic than it is outside. So you think that you're going inside, you're getting away from all the debris and chemicals and everything else. You may be poisoned right in your own home. Now, I don't mean to be drastic. I'm not here to, just be so alarming that you go home and you're trying to, expel everything, all the toxins from your house. But I just want you to recognize that our indoor air may be more toxic. And right now, I read recently, there's about 80,000 chemicals registered. And only a fraction of them have been tested for what happens with human health. So every day there's more chemicals being created. We don't really know how they affect the health and how, when they interact with each other, what they do. So I just want you to be cognizant of that. And especially when you're taking on a construction project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about your home renovation projects and just a couple things you should consider if you're taking on a project right now. It's springtime. A lot of times in spring, people are like, they get their tax refund. They're like, okay, I'm going to use this portion of it and I'm going to do a home renovation project. When you're thinking about indoor air quality, you may be familiar with certain sources of pollutants, like, for example, mold and dust. Everybody's familiar with that. And you may have heard about things about your indoor air filtration and perhaps the ventilation of your home. Those are very important today. But I'm going to focus more on pollutant sources. So everybody's probably heard the term VOCs, right? And I know in this audience, you've all heard of the term VOC, volatile organic compounds. But do you really know what that means? How many of you really know it? It's okay. How many of you really knows what that means? Okay. We see it a lot on labels, and we say, oh, that's good. You know, it's low VOC. So, but that's all we know, right? So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. VOCs are compounds which have a high vapor pressure and low water solubility, therefore they evaporate easily. That's what the technical definition of VOCs are. So some of these VOCs are hazardous to our health. However, when you think about VOCs, I want to remember that the definition of VOC was not meant to comply with indoor air quality. The definition, the original definition that the EPA came up with, it was meant to figure out what elements was producing smog in the air outside of your homes. So when you see low VOCs, it's not necessarily equating with what should go into your house. Does that make sense to everybody? So we use that term, but it's not really accurate. So not all VOCs are bad, even though VOCs are a catchphrase for everything that's bad right now. So if you don't remember anything else that I say today, I want you to remember this. You need to educate yourself and don't rely on the eco labels, because anybody can put a label onto their product. And as a matter of fact, there's no regulatory body that standardizes the labels that are put on the products. So there's no government agency that says you can put this on there, you can't put this on there. At least at this time, there's nobody that does that. So I really want you to think about educating yourself and thinking about what a green alternative can be, and it's not always going to be stamped on the face of a product. All right, so I want to talk about one VOC in particular, something that comes up a lot, formaldehyde. You probably heard about formaldehyde a lot. It's used as a preservative, it's used as a disinfectant, it's used in manufacturing glues and resins. So it is used in a lot of polymers, it's used in an awful lot of building materials. And I just wanted to give you a couple, I'm gonna get a little bit technical on you, but hopefully you're not gonna get too technical where I lose you. Okay, so there's a term called NAUF, N-A-U-F, no added urea formaldehyde. You might have seen that on things like cabinets and plywood, things that are composite materials. Have you seen that term before? Mm-hmm. Well, if you haven't seen it, maybe you should look for it. See, formaldehyde is a VOC, and it's known to off-gas fairly heavily into the air. And so there's three general types of formaldehyde that you can use in resins, things, composite materials like the ones I mentioned. And that one, the urea formaldehyde, is probably the one that's most detrimental. It off-gas the quickest. So if you get a cabinet or if you get a piece of MDF, you want to look for something that says no added urea formaldehyde, and most likely they're going to have a different type of formaldehyde in it. Now, I guess I'm going to tell you this, and I don't mean to alarm you, but that other formaldehyde is still off-gas, but it's just not as bad as the urea formaldehyde. It doesn't go as quickly. Okay, so my second tip for you, besides educating yourself, is maybe look for things that have formaldehyde in them and consider what you're layering into your space. So if you're doing a new kitchen project, you may get new cabinets, right? You may get new flooring, you may get new shelving. All of these things have resins and adhesives in them, and it's likely they have formaldehyde in them. It's also likely that you're using cleaning products that might have formaldehyde in it. You're probably using paper products that have formaldehyde in it. So you're bringing all these things into your space unknowingly, and you're kind of just, piling on these toxins in your home. All right, so let me go to another toxin that's not really known that well, but I think that's fairly interesting, and I want to introduce another term to you, SVOCs. Have you heard about that before, SVOCs? So SVOCs are semi-volatile organic compounds, and they can also be dangerous. They don't release as quickly as VOCs, and that's probably why you don't hear about them as much, but they can be transferred to humans, usually by touch, by adhering to dust, or you can ingest them. And so SVOCs are used in a lot of different building materials. Sometimes they provide flexibility to building materials, sometimes they have water resistance, sometimes it's stain resistance. And so that happens quite often. They put that into building materials. I wanted to talk a little bit about phthalates. Have you heard of that before? P-H-T-H-A-L-A-T-E-S. And so That is used in PVC, and most of us have PVCs in our home. Usually it's used for plumbing, but it also could be used for waterproofing, siding, doors, window, all sorts of things in our home, carpet backing, wall covering, flooring. And unfortunately, the PVC always has this particular chemical in it to make it more flexible, and that particular chemical, the phthalates, has lots of evidence of doing things to your respiratory. It can cause respiratory problems. It can cause asthma in adults and children. There's studies that say that it may lead to both obesity and insulin resistance in adults, and it's also known to actually harm reproductive, and it's a developmental toxin as well. So when I work at my showroom, a lot of times I'm working with expectant mothers, and of course they don't want these sort of toxins in their home because they're thinking about the children in their home. Those sort of things, the phthalates, not only can they be in PVC, but oftentimes they're in fragrance. So the things that you spray in your home, it may have that in it as well. And so I guess my last tip to you, besides educating yourself, maybe trying to figure out how you can reduce things like formaldehyde and phthalates, is think about when you're renovating your home, durability and how you will clean your space. So if you pick out items that you can clean easily and not use a lot of chemicals on, you won't be layering on that next level of toxins in your home. By that I mean, maybe using hard surfaces as opposed to soft surfaces. Instead of carpeting, maybe use a wood. Think about when you tile, you might want to have big tiles as opposed to little tiles because the grout lines are going to have more microbial growth than the tile will have. So you can think about these things before you renovate. That will cause you not to clean as much maybe, and that's that's a win for everybody, right? So I guess just in conclusion, I want to say that every day we face a lot of different health issues. It doesn't necessarily have to be the toxins in our home. It could be walking down the street, driving a car, flying. We always have risk in our everyday life. And we're always being exposed to different environmental elements and different environmental issues. But some of these risks that we have are avoidable. So that's what I really want you to take away today, is that some of these things are avoidable. And as long as you're armed with knowledge, you can make your space, your environment, not only better for yourself, but for your family. Those with chemical sensitivities, people that are young, people that are elderly, not only is it good for the environment, but it's good for just creating that space that's more welcoming and better for you and yours. So I will leave you with that, and I'll pass the mic over to the next speaker.
Thank you.